Now to a disturbing report on ISIS and foreign fighters that's being released this hour by a US congressional task force. It found that nearly 30,000 foreign recruits have poured into Syria and Iraq since 2011, many to join ISIS. 15,000 of them have made the trip in the last year alone, an astonishing doubling of numbers that coincides with a ramped-up coalition air campaign and pressure on Turkey to close the border. Included in those figures are more than 150 Americans who managed to enter Syria last year. So what's behind this surge? Let's bring in CNN's Pamela Brown, who's in Washington for us. Pamela, despite the US airstrike campaign and the fact that thousands of ISIS fighters have reportedly been killed, it seems they can't keep up with this huge influx of foreign fighters.
That's right. This report makes that point clear, Linda. It says that this is the largest convergence of jihadists in history. And even though 10,000 foreign fighters are believed to have been killed in military strikes, there are still nearly 30,000 foreign fighters overseas with terrorists. And the big problem is that new foreign fighters replace the ones that died almost as quickly as they were killed. So that, of course, highlights this problem of preventing Westerners from traveling to Syria. And right here in the U.S., despite stepped up efforts, of the 250 plus Americans who have joined or tried to join extremists in Syria and Iraq, this report says the majority, more than 85%, still managed to evade law enforcement, and several dozen have managed to make it back into the U.S. Of course, many of these people were operating under the radar, and so that is a huge concern for law enforcement. Linda?
A huge concern is, and as this war plays out in Syria, we've seen all these refugees flood into Europe, and reports ISIS may be planning attacks there. Will that spur on more action and support from that region of the world? Will we see European countries join the fight against ISIS?
That is certainly the hope, that those efforts will be stepped up. There is some data sharing from European countries, but reading through this report, it talks about the gaping security weaknesses, and it points out that many European countries don't even do basic counterterrorism checks. Also, many of these countries don't share the same amount of information about people in their country they may be concerned about due to privacy concerns. So as a result, people like the alleged ISIS sympathizer, you may recall, who recently attempted to open fire on a train from Amsterdam to Paris, he was able to travel from Berlin to Turkey on a plane, then return back to Europe and attempt to launch an attack on that train without being stopped, even though he was known to intelligence officials in Europe. And furthermore, his name was never shared with U.S. law enforcement, so he could have boarded a plane to the U.S. to launch an attack here. That really highlights the problem.
And clearly more has to be done about intelligence sharing between these countries to stop that from happening. Pamela Brown in Washington, thank you very much for that update.